She was rejected at the winter festival gathering. Then a little girl asked, "Why are you crying?" Snow fell like soft silver dust over the kingdom of Orlia, blanketing its cobblestone streets and towering spires in quiet white. Lanterns hung along the festival avenues, their golden glow reflecting off frozen fountains and ice-carved statues of ancient heroes. The winter festival gathering was the event of the year, a night where nobles and commoners alike mingled beneath the pale light, sharing laughter, music, and fleeting glimpses of magic that seemed to shimmer in the air itself. Among the crowd, Ilara moved like a shadow between laughter and light, her dark cloak brushing against the snow. She was slender and delicate, with eyes that carried quiet storms, yet she was often overlooked. Her family, proud and ambitious, had brought her here not as a guest of honor, but as an ornament, someone to fill space and look presentable. Tonight, however, had been different. Ilara had gathered her courage, hoping, just for a moment, that she might belong, that someone might see her for more than her family's expectations. But the moment she stepped forward, her heart full of quiet hope, rejection struck. Her elder sister, Lady Marwen, laughed softly at a passing noble who had complimented Ilara on her gown. "Surely you jest," Marwen said with a curl of her lip. Ilara could never hold a conversation worthy of attention. She might as well stay behind the curtains. The words were sharper than the winter wind. Ilara felt her cheeks burn as the noble tried to apologize, but Marwen waved them off. Whispers rose around her like ice crystals in the air, eyes flickering to her with polite curiosity that quickly turned to disdain. Ilara's chest tightened. She wanted to disappear, to vanish into the falling snow, but she had nowhere to go. The festival, so bright and beautiful, had become a cage, the laughter around her like the ringing of distant bells she could not reach. She stepped away from the crowd, her boots crunching in the fresh snow, until she reached the edge of the festival grounds where the lanterns faded and the soft white of the winter forest began. The trees, coated in frost, whispered in the wind, and a cold loneliness wrapped around her heart. She sank to her knees in the snow, feeling the chill bite through her cloak. Tears formed, blurring the lantern light into gentle streaks. Why can't I be enough?" she whispered to herself, her voice trembling. The words were carried away on the wind, swallowed by the cold silence of the forest, and then softly came a small, gentle voice. "Why are you crying?" Ilara's head shot up. At first she saw nothing but snow and shadows. Then, emerging from between the frost-covered trees, was a little girl. She wore a simple dress, pale as moonlight, and her hair fell in soft waves around her small, serious face. Her eyes were bright, unnervingly knowing, as if they could see straight into Ilara's heart. I was just," Ilara started, but the words faltered. She had never been spoken to with such directness by anyone, let alone a child. There was no judgment, no laughter, just pure curiosity. "You look sad," the girl said softly, stepping closer. Snowflakes clung to her hair, but she did not shiver. The snow does not like tears, it wants to shine on happy faces. Ilara blinked. She wanted to ask who the girl was, but there was something in her gaze that made her pause. I'm just alone," she admitted, her voice cracking. And no one cares." The little girl tilted her head as though considering her words. Then from her tiny hands she revealed a small, glowing talisman. It shimmered faintly, casting a soft, warm light over Ilara's pale cheeks. "This will help you," the girl said simply. "It shows the path to those who are lost." Ilara stared, unsure whether to believe her. I don't even know who you are," she whispered. The girl smiled, a faint, fleeting curve of her lips. "That doesn't matter, you need it more than I do. But beware," she added, her voice suddenly grave. "The path is not easy. It may show things you do not wish to see." Ilara's hands trembled as she reached for the talisman. It was warm, like a tiny heart, and she felt a spark of something unfamiliar, hope, or perhaps magic, stir inside her chest. She clutched it tightly, feeling its gentle pulse against her palm. "I thank you," she said softly. The little girl nodded once. "Follow your heart. Listen to what it tells you. That is the way to find what is lost, even if it is yourself." Before Alara could ask more, the girl turned and disappeared into the forest, her figure fading like mist among the frost. Alara stayed where she was, holding the talisman, feeling the warmth spread through her cold fingers. She realized something then, something terrifying and wonderful. She had a choice. She could remain in the shadow of rejection, as her family and society had always expected, or she could step forward into a world she did not yet understand. The festival's music and laughter drifted faintly to her ears, distant and muted. In the snow around her, the trees seemed to lean closer, the branches whispering encouragement, as if urging her to move forward. The talisman pulsed again, guiding her. Alara rose, brushing snow from her cloak. She felt lighter than she had in years, though fear and uncertainty still gnawed at her. She did not know what lay ahead, but she knew she could not return to the life she had before. Her journey led her deeper into the forest, where the snow grew thick and the moonlight glimmered off the frost like a river of stars. Shadows moved between the trees, and Alara's heart beat faster, yet she felt an unfamiliar resolve. She clutched the talisman tightly, letting its glow light her way. After some time, she reached the ruins of an old castle, half hidden beneath frost and ice. It had once belonged to King Selim, a monarch of great wisdom, now whispered about in legends for his dealings with magic and curses. The castle's towers rose like frozen fingers into the sky, and the air around it shimmered with an ethereal energy. Alara paused at the edge, awe and fear mixing in her chest. The little girl's words echoed in her mind. "The path is not easy. It may show things you do not wish to see." Stepping inside the castle was like entering another world. The halls were vast and silent, the floors coated in frost that crunched beneath her boots. Candlelight, inexplicably flickering in the windows, illuminated the portraits of ancient kings and queens, their eyes seeming to follow her as she moved. And then from the shadows she sensed another presence, a watcher, tall and imposing yet not threatening. Alara's pulse quickened. The castle had been abandoned for decades, yet she felt eyes on her, observing her very soul. "Who's there?" she whispered, though the sound felt swallowed by the vast halls. A figure emerged, cloaked and silent. Prince Rylan, as she would later learn, bound by a mysterious curse that had kept him tethered to the castle. His eyes were dark as the winter sky, and though he spoke no words, his gaze carried centuries of loneliness and sorrow. Alara instinctively clutched the talisman. It pulsed warmly, as if recognizing the prince. He raised a hand, not in threat, but in acknowledgement, and a faint spark of connection passed between them, a silent understanding of shared loss and rejection. Perhaps, Alara thought, this night, this snow, this strange, glowing child has led me to something I never expected, a path not only through the forest but through the shadows of my own heart. She did not yet understand the dangers that awaited her, or the trials she would face. But as the wind howled through the empty halls and the snow fell silently outside, Alara took her first step forward, into a destiny entwined with magic, sorrow, and an uncertain hope. The little girl's voice, faint as the wind, whispered again in her memory, "Follow your heart. Even if it trembles, even if it breaks, it knows the way." And for the first time in her life, Alara believed it might. Alara did not sleep that night. The castle's vast halls whispered around her, the sound of wind through broken windows mingling with her heartbeat. Every shadow seemed alive, every flicker of candlelight a silent observer. She clutched the glowing talisman tightly, feeling its warmth steady her. The little girl's words echoed again in her mind. "Follow your heart. Listen to what it tells you. That is the way to find what is lost." By morning, the winter sun had barely crested the horizon, casting pale light over the frost-covered castle. The snow outside stretched in endless white plains, broken only by the dark silhouettes of trees in the forest of frost. Alara knew she had to leave. The talisman pulsed, urging her forward, and she understood that the path she had begun at the festival was only the first step of a much larger journey. Stepping into the forest, the snow crunched beneath her boots, and a strange hush settled over the trees. Branches heavy with frost bent slightly as if bowing to her presence, and ice-covered leaves sparkled like tiny mirrors. The forest seemed alive, not with animals or birds but with something more subtle, a consciousness that reacted to emotion. Alara drew a deep breath. Her heart was still heavy with the rejection at the festival, but now there was a spark of determination. She could not stay the person everyone deemed unworthy. She could not ignore the call of the talisman, the call to a fate she could not yet understand. The forest grew thicker as she walked, and soon she noticed faint markings on the snow, small footprints, far too tiny for an adult. She followed them cautiously, feeling a sense of recognition. The little girl, she must be near. Suddenly, a whisper drifted through the trees, carried on a wind colder than the snow itself. It was almost a voice, saying her name, Alara. Alara, she shivered, half in fear, half in anticipation. The talisman glowed brighter, warming her hand, urging her forward. After some time, the footprints led her to a clearing where frost hung like crystals from the trees. In the center, a small, sparkling pond reflected the sky. And there, standing beside the ice, was the little girl once more. Her dress shimmered with a faint, otherworldly light, and her eyes held that same deep knowledge that had unnerved Alara before. "You've come," the girl said simply. "The path grows harder. Are you ready to see what lies ahead?" Alara swallowed hard. I don't know. I just know I can't turn back." The girl nodded. "Good. That is the first step. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward despite it." With that, the girl pointed toward a distant ruin half hidden in snow and mist. "The castle of King Selim awaits. There the past and present meet, and truths you have not yet faced will be revealed. But beware, seeing is not always the same as understanding." Alara's chest tightened. She had heard the stories of King Selim, a monarch who had ruled centuries ago and had been tied to a powerful curse. The castle was said to punish the proud and reveal the deepest secrets of those who entered. Many had gone, and few had returned unchanged. And yet, with the talisman pulsing in her hand, Alara felt a strange courage. She stepped forward, leaving the little girl behind, trusting that the child's guidance would carry her through. The journey was long. The forest seemed to shift around her, paths appearing and disappearing like reflections in ice. At times, she felt watched. Shadows moved in the corners of her vision, and a low, almost musical hum vibrated through the trees. Fear fluttered in her chest, but she pressed on, repeating the little girl's words to herself. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward despite it. Finally, after what felt like hours, the ruin appeared. The castle rose from the snow like a frozen giant, its towers reaching toward the pale sky. Icicles hung from its spires and frost clung to the crumbling walls, giving it an ethereal, almost otherworldly beauty. The air around it shimmered faintly, and Alara felt the weight of unseen eyes upon her. She stepped inside cautiously. The great hall was vast and silent. Frost had claimed the floors, and broken chandeliers hung like frozen constellations above her. Shadows danced along the walls, thrown by the soft light of enchanted candles that burned without flame. Portraits of ancient kings and queens lined the walls, their eyes seeming to follow her as she moved, some full of judgment, others sorrow. And then she saw him. A figure emerged from the shadows, a man tall and broad, cloaked in dark robes. His hair was as black as the winter night, his eyes deep pools of darkness. He moved with a quiet grace, almost silently, yet there was a presence about him that made the hall feel smaller, as if the air itself had condensed around him. Alara's breath caught. She had felt the presence of someone in the castle earlier, but she had not expected to see him. "I have been waiting," the figure said, his voice low and smooth, carrying a weight that made her spine stiffen. "Not for you exactly, but for someone like you." Alara took a cautious step back. "Who are you?" she asked, clutching the talisman tightly. The man inclined his head. "I am Prince Rylan. I am bound to this place cursed as this castle is cursed. I cannot leave until the truth is faced, until the shadows are lifted. And now, it seems your path has led you here." Alara's heart beat faster. The talisman pulsed in response, warming her hand. She felt an odd connection, a spark that neither she nor the prince could explain. And yet she was wary. He was a stranger, and the stories of the castle were full of danger. I don't know what I'm doing here," she admitted. "I only followed, the path." Ryland's gaze softened slightly, though his eyes remained intense. "The path chooses those who are ready, and you, perhaps more than you realize. The castle will show you many things, Alara. Some you will wish to forget, some you will fear. And some may change the way you see yourself forever." The weight of his words settled over her. She realized that this castle, this journey, was not just about magic or legends. It was about her own heart. She had been rejected at the festival, shunned by those she loved. Yet now she was being asked to confront truths she had never faced, to see herself clearly for the first time. I will try," she said finally, feeling the warmth of the talisman spread through her chest. "I will try no matter what I see," Ryland nodded. "Good, then we begin." He led her through the halls deeper into the castle. Each room seemed to respond to their presence. Frost rose from the floors like mist, forming shapes that shimmered and twisted. Alara saw glimpses of her own reflection in the ice, sometimes small and fragile, sometimes tall and commanding, sometimes shadowed by fear. The castle did not merely show the past or present, it reflected the possibilities of the soul. As they walked, Ryland spoke of the curse. He told her of the queen who had once ruled the kingdom, with a blend of kindness and cruelty, whose magic had become entangled with pride and vengeance. Her ancestors, he explained, had angered the queen unknowingly, and now the kingdom suffered subtle decay. Rivers froze too long, crops failed, and winter seemed harsher than it should be. Alara listened, feeling both fear and fascination. The stories made her head spin, but there was a strange pull in her heart. If she could understand the curse, if she could face the truths of the past, perhaps she could help. Perhaps she could find the place where she truly belonged. Hours passed, though it was impossible to tell. The castle seemed to stretch time itself. They reached a chamber at the heart of the ruin, where the frost was thick and the air shimmered with magic. In the center a mirror stood, tall and ornate, framed with carvings of stars and snowflakes. "This," Ryland said softly, "is where the castle will speak most clearly. Look and do not turn away, face what is shown." Alara stepped forward. She hesitated, then took a deep breath. The mirror reflected not just her image, but layers of possibilities. A girl rejected and alone, a girl brave and determined, a girl tied to magic she did not yet understand. And beneath it all, a shadow of the past queen watched her, eyes sharp and discerning. Fear rose, but she did not look away. She could feel the talisman pulsing against her heart, guiding her, reminding her that courage was not the absence of fear. And then the mirror shimmered, showing her not just her own face, but the face of someone she had not expected. A young girl, smiling kindly, standing in the snow outside the festival, asking softly, "Why are you crying?" Alara gasped. The memory struck her with a wave of emotion. The little girl, the talisman, they were part of this path, part of the journey she had been chosen for. And perhaps, she realized, they were here to help her remember that even in rejection, even in sorrow, she was not truly alone. Rylan watched silently, his expression unreadable. "The mirror shows what you must see, but it cannot tell you how to act. That choice is yours." Alara nodded, determination hardening in her chest. I will act. I will not let the past control me. I will find a way to lift the curse, and to find myself." The castle seemed to exhale around them, the frost glittering like a promise. But as the wind howled through broken windows and the shadows of the chamber deepened, Alara could not shake a growing unease. The path ahead would be difficult, the choices painful, and the truths she must face would challenge everything she thought she knew. Yet, for the first time, she felt ready. The talisman glowed warmly in her hand. The mirror shimmered. And somewhere, deep in the castle's frozen heart, the echoes of a long-forgotten curse waited for her next step. The castle of King Selim seemed alive in ways Alara had never imagined. Shadows moved like whispers, frost shifted like smoke, and the echo of footsteps, her own and Ryland's, reverberated against walls that had long been abandoned. Yet it was not fear that filled her heart this time, but a strange, electric anticipation. The talisman pulsed steadily in her hand, guiding her as she stepped deeper into the castle's frozen corridors. Prince Ryland walked beside her, his presence a constant weight, at once comforting and unsettling. He spoke little, but every glance he cast, every subtle movement, seemed carefully measured. Alara could feel that he understood the castle's power in a way she could not, and yet he did not command it. He obeyed it as though the castle itself bound him more tightly than chains or doors ever could. "Why do you help me?" Alara asked quietly as they entered a hall lined with towering ice pillars. The frosted light fractured around them, scattering into shards that danced like fire. Ryland's dark eyes met hers. "I do not help you," he said, his voice low and steady. "We are bound by the same curse. I do not choose who enters this castle. The castle chooses, and it has chosen you. I only guide because I cannot leave this place myself." Alara's chest tightened. "And what happens if I fail?" "Then you remain lost," he said simply, and for a moment the weight of centuries pressed upon her. The castle did not forgive. It did not allow weakness. And yet she did not feel despair. She felt challenge. They entered a chamber at the heart of the castle, a vast room where frost covered the walls in delicate, shimmering patterns. In the center stood a circular pool of ice, perfectly smooth, reflecting the ceiling above as though the room itself were a mirror turned upside down. Around the pool, small motes of light floated, hovering like fireflies, though their glow was cold and crystalline. "The heart of the castle," Ryland said. "This is where the visions are strongest. You will see truths here that are impossible to ignore. Are you ready?" Alara hesitated. Her hand tightened on the talisman. She had already seen glimpses of herself in mirrors and reflections, but this felt deeper, heavier. And yet she nodded. "I am ready." She stepped toward the icy pool, and the lights around it brightened as if recognizing her presence. Her reflection shimmered, then twisted, forming layers of faces, hers as a child, hers as a girl rejected at the festival, and another, more haunting, the queen who had cast the curse centuries ago. The queen's eyes were sharp, piercing, and full of judgment, and Alara felt herself shrink under the weight of that gaze. "You are not her," she whispered, almost involuntarily. "I am not her." But the reflection shifted again. This time it showed not just the queen, but a merging of them, Alara's own sorrow, fear, and pride blending with the queen's power and anger. She gasped, stumbling backward. The room seemed to tremble with her heartbeat. "You cannot deny what is part of you," Ryland said softly. "You carry her blood, the castle reflects that. It will not show lies, it will show truth." Alara took a deep breath. She could feel the talisman warmth spreading into her chest, steadying her fear. She forced herself to look again. She saw her own rejection, yes, but also the courage she had found in following the path, in stepping into the unknown. She saw moments of kindness, resilience, and bravery she had overlooked in herself. And beneath it all, a spark of power waiting to awaken. I see it," she whispered. "I see that I am more than I thought." Ryland nodded. "Good, but seeing is only the first step. Acting on it, that is the true test." The ice pool trembled, and then the lights around it began to swirl, forming shapes, visions not just of herself, but of the kingdom outside. She saw villages buried under frost, fields failing, rivers frozen before their time. She saw townsfolk struggling, their faces lined with worry and fear. And somewhere beneath it all, she sensed the weight of the curse, like a shadow stretching across time, touching every life in Orlia. "You can end this," Ryland said, his voice almost a whisper. "Or you can let it continue. The choice is yours, Alara, but the castle, it will test you first." The vision shifted, showing a path of fire through the snow, a winding road that led deep into the mountains, where the queen's spirit was said to dwell. And there, at the center, the little girl appeared once more, holding her talisman and smiling kindly. The child's eyes seemed to say, "You are not alone. You can face this." Alara felt her pulse quicken. She had followed the talisman this far, through snow and fear, through rejection and doubt. She could not turn back now. She could not ignore the call that had drawn her here. But as she looked again, the vision changed. Shadows gathered around the little girl, dark and twisting, whispering in voices too low to understand. The child trembled, and a sense of danger flared in Alara's chest. Something was coming, something she could not yet see or name. "Whatever it is," Alara said, gripping the talisman tightly, "I will face it." Ryland stepped closer, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "And you will not be alone, but trust must be earned and courage tested. The castle will show you both." Suddenly the pool's surface rippled, and the air grew colder, sharper. Shapes began to rise from the ice, phantoms of the past, twisted figures of knights, nobles and sorcerers long gone. They moved with purpose, their faces pale and hollow, their eyes empty, yet full of accusation. Alara took a step back, but Ryland held her steady. "Do not be afraid," he said. "They are shadows, echoes of the past. They cannot touch you unless you let them. Face them and you may learn what you need to know." The figures advanced, their whispers forming a chorus of warnings and regrets. Alara felt her heart clench with guilt, shame, and fear. She had been rejected, humiliated, left alone in the festival's light. Yet now she stood here, facing not only her past but the past of generations she had never known. The talisman glowed brighter, almost blindingly so, and warmth spread through her fingers, her hands, and her chest. She took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage she had. "I am not afraid," she said firmly, her voice echoing in the hall. "I am ready to see the truth, and I will act. I will not let the past define me." For a moment the shadows paused, as if considering her words. Then slowly they began to shift, their faces changing, softening. Some showed sorrow, others hope, and some a faint smile. The anger and judgment faded, replaced by something softer. "You see," Ryland said quietly, "the castle responds to courage. Fear feeds it, doubt strengthens the shadows, but clarity and determination can change what you see." Alara's chest heaved. The weight of centuries seemed to lift slightly from her shoulders. She had taken the first true step, not just through the castle, not just through the visions, but through her own fear. Then, from the corner of her vision, she saw movement. The shadows of the past had receded, but something new had emerged, something alive. A figure cloaked in darkness, with eyes like frozen fire, watching her from the far edge of the hall. It did not move like the others. It did not speak. But Alara felt its gaze pierce her soul, and a chill ran down her spine. What is that?" she whispered. Ryland's face grew serious. "That is the part of the curse that remains strongest. The queen's shadow, the part that refuses to yield. It will test not only your courage but your heart, and it will not stop until you face it." Alara swallowed hard, feeling both fear and resolve. She had come this far, faced visions of herself in the kingdom, walked through snow and ice guided by a small, glowing talisman, and now she stood before the final trial of the castle, one that would demand more than courage. It would demand trust, compassion, and an understanding of her own heart. "I am ready," she said again, louder this time, the warmth of the talisman spreading through her chest and into her soul. "I will face it, and I will not turn away." The shadows shifted, the ice shimmered, and the air seemed to hold its breath. For the first time, Alara felt something beyond fear, something she had not felt in years: hope. And then the darkness moved closer, silent as a falling snowflake, and the hall seemed to grow colder, sharper, alive with anticipation. The castle had chosen its next step, and Alara, for all her doubts and fears, was ready to follow it. The wind howled through the towers of the frozen castle, carrying snow and ice like sharp whispers across the stone walls. Alara stood at the heart of the great hall, the talisman warm in her palm, its gentle light cutting through the shadows. Across from her, the queen's shadow waited, a figure of darkness and frost, her eyes cold fires that seemed to pierce straight into Alara's heart. Prince Ryland stood beside her, silent but steadfast. His presence was a calm weight against the storm of fear building inside her. Together, they faced the queen's shadow, knowing that this moment would determine not only the fate of the castle but the future of the kingdom. "You have come far," the shadow spoke, her voice echoing like a winter gale. "But courage alone will not save you. You must understand, or all will remain frozen." Alara drew a deep breath, feeling the talisman pulse against her chest. "I do not seek to deny your power," she said firmly. "I only seek to understand, to lift the curse and help the kingdom." The shadow laughed softly, a sound like cracking ice. "Do you think you can erase centuries of pride, betrayal, and sorrow with words?" I must try," Alara said. "I will face the truth no matter how hard it is." For a moment the shadow seemed to hesitate. Then slowly it advanced, its form twisting like smoke and frost. The room grew colder, the air sharp as glass. Alara felt a chill crawl up her spine, but she held her ground, letting the warmth of the talisman flow through her. Ryland stepped closer. "The shadow will test you," he said quietly. "It will show your fears, your doubts, but it cannot touch you unless you give it power. Remember what the little girl said. Your heart knows the way." Alara nodded, focusing on the words, on the warmth in her chest, on the spark of courage that had guided her from the festival to this moment. She closed her eyes for a moment and let herself feel everything: the rejection, the sorrow, the hope, the determination. When she opened her eyes, the shadow lunged forward, and the hall seemed to explode with icy wind. Visions flashed across the walls: her family laughing at the festival, her own tears on the snowy path, villages suffering under frost, faces of people she had never met, all trapped in the shadow's dark grasp. Alara's knees threatened to buckle, but she stood firm, raising the talisman. Its light flared, pushing against the shadows, spilling warmth into the icy room. "You do not control me," she said, voice ringing with newfound strength. "I am not just what you see. I am my own person. I am courage, I am hope, I am more than sorrow or rejection." The shadow recoiled, hissing, then gathered itself, eyes narrowing like shards of ice. "Bold child," it said, voice softer now, almost curious. "You speak with fire, yet you tremble. Can you hold it?" Alara clenched her hands around the talisman. "I will hold it. I will face the truth, and I will act with my heart." The shadow paused, then slowly, like ice melting under sunlight, began to change. The harsh lines softened, the cold eyes warmed, and for the first time Alara saw not anger or judgment, but sorrow and longing. You understand," the shadow whispered, voice no longer echoing like wind but soft and human. "You see what I am, and yet you do not flee." Alara's breath caught. I see the pain you carried, I know you suffered, but I also know that the kingdom cannot remain trapped in the past. There is hope if you let it." The shadow shivered, its form flickering like frost in sunlight. Slowly it reached forward, and Alara stepped closer, talisman in hand. She felt the warmth spread from the talisman into the shadow, softening it, filling it with light. A gentle wind blew through the hall, and the frost that had covered the floors and walls began to shimmer and fall away. The shadow's icy form dissipated, leaving behind a faint, almost human figure, kneeling on the floor, head bowed. "You have freed me," the figure whispered. "The curse, it is lifted. The kingdom can breathe again. Alara exhaled, feeling a wave of relief and exhaustion wash over her. The hall, once cold and threatening, now seemed alive with gentle warmth. Snowflakes swirled through the air, sparkling like tiny stars. Ryland stepped forward, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. "You did it," he said, his voice soft but full of admiration. "You faced the shadows, not with anger or fear, but with your heart. That is the true power." Alara looked around the hall, taking in the light, the warmth, the change. The visions of suffering were gone, replaced by hope and renewal. She realized that the journey had not been about defeating the shadow alone, but about confronting her own heart, her own doubts, and finding courage where she thought none existed. I never imagined I could do this," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I thought I was too weak, too small, too nothing." "You are never nothing," Ryland said firmly. "You are everything you choose to be, and you are never truly alone. Even in the darkest moments there is guidance, there is hope, if you let yourself see it." Alara glanced at the talisman, now glowing faintly, almost as if it were content. She smiled softly, understanding for the first time that it had not been magic alone that guided her. It had been her own heart, her willingness to believe in herself, even when the world had said otherwise. Days passed in the castle, though it felt like minutes and hours intertwined. Alara and Rylan explored the halls, discovering hidden rooms filled with ancient books, forgotten treasures, and quiet corners where frost had not yet claimed the stone. Slowly they grew closer, not through words of romance, but through shared understanding, mutual respect, and the quiet intimacy of facing hardship together. Rylan, who had been bound to the castle for centuries, began to see not only the kingdom anew, but himself. Alara's courage inspired him, her heart softened the cold he had carried for ages, and he realized that the curse had been as much about isolation as punishment. Now, with Alara's strength beside him, he felt a freedom he had not known in decades. One evening, standing atop the castle's highest tower, they watched the winter moon rise over the snow-covered kingdom. The village lights below twinkled like fireflies, and for the first time, the world felt alive and welcoming rather than cold and harsh. "You've changed everything," Ryland said softly, his hand brushing against hers. "Not just the castle, not just the kingdom, but me." Alara smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. "We've changed it together. You guided me and I found courage. That is how we heal." The wind whispered around them, carrying faint echoes of the little girl's voice. "Why are you crying?" But now the question felt like a memory, a reminder of where she had begun and how far she had come. Alara no longer cried from sorrow, but from the profound relief of knowing she had found her own strength. The festival had rejected her, society had doubted her, and even her own heart had trembled with fear. Yet through snow, shadows, and visions of the past, she had found herself. She had faced the queen's shadow, lifted the curse, and discovered that love, courage, and hope were more powerful than fear, pride, or rejection. The little girl's spirit, unseen but felt, had guided her, reminding her that even in the darkest winters, warmth and light could be found. And now, standing with Rylan beside her, Alara knew that the world was not just a place of rejection, but a place of choice, of redemption, and of renewal. I think it's over," Alara said softly. "For now," Rylan replied, a faint smile curving his lips. "But life will always bring challenges. What matters is that you face them with courage, together if you choose." Alara looked at him, the snow swirling around them like silver fire, and for the first time she felt the full weight of possibility, of freedom, and of love, gentle, patient, and true. "Yes," she whispered, "together." And as the winter moon cast its light over the thawing kingdom, the castle walls seemed to hum with life, the frost melting into rivers of warmth, the shadows retreating, and a new era dawning, not just for Aurelia, but for the hearts of those brave enough to face themselves and embrace the light within. The little girl's question, once a seed of sorrow, had become a guiding star, Why are you crying? And now, for Alara, the answer was clear. She had cried for loss, for fear, for rejection, but she no longer cried for herself alone. She had found courage, hope, and love, and she would carry them, shining like fire through the coldest winters to come. The kingdom of Orlia breathed once more. And in its heart, Alara and Rylan stood together, ready to face whatever future awaited, their hearts thawed, their spirits unbroken, and their path lit by courage, compassion, and a magic all their own.